Hi guys, my name is Ron. I'm sure there are some fresh faces and those that I have had some prior classes with. Welcome everybody. I'm going to get right into it since these are short and I have a tendency to ramble. So this week, our first week here, we're to look at a couple dissertations or theses in our preferred field. Where I went with that is looking at what my dissertation topic is, which is American progressivism as Marxism. And I am basically attempting to or plan to define American progressivism at its roots as a form of Marxism, uh, more closely related to German National Socialism, a form of German Marxism, and kind of making those ties there. In that realm, I went looking for a couple different dissertations on the required search engine, and I came up with a couple different gentlemen. The first guy, his name is Strathdy. He's out of Alberta, Canada, and he's basically looking at progressivism through a form of an ancient Gnostic religion called Manichaeism. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. Don't hold me to that one. Basically, he's looking at there's two views of human nature. And he looks at John Stuart Mill and St. Augustine, which I found highly interesting. And he basically states that John Stuart Mill, who was a progressive, looks at it through this Gnostic lens of evil is inherent in humanity. It can be overcome through will, but as people gather, collectivize, work together, things begin to come apart. And he relates this to being able to see 20th century movements like Marxism and the residential schools and modern day identity politics. Now, on the other hand, Strathdy looks at St. Augustine, who basically focuses more on the politics of human nature, as he says it, and that evil is not an irredeemable externality, but a corruption of a created good. And basically, what St. Augustine is saying is that alone human beings are not able to, through self will, overcome this evil, and that they need certain structures and certain things in place and certain rules, basically biblical salvation and resulting government and leadership in that lane. I would sort of go there, is what Augustine is saying. And he basically, Strathdy says that Augustine understood progressivism as an oversimplified understanding of freedom. I would probably stray away from that. I would say that the progressives don't oversimplify freedom. I think they over equate the collective organism and its efficiency. That's where I would go with that. My second thesis dissertation that I chose is by a gentleman named Bartol out of Yale. And I found this interesting because one of the classic arguments about progressivism is that they are inherently tied to the Fabian socialists out of Britain. And that would actually be incorrect, to put it bluntly, which may be controversial. It's not when you read into the source material and really begin to dig into Richard T. Ely, Wisconsin, the beginnings of Rauschenbusch and other, you can go whichever way of the progressives. They're basically all German educated, and they highly differ with the Fabian socialists ideologically and where the state intervenes and how. And Bartol really goes into this, and he has an entire section where he talks about Fabian socialism of Britain, 1830s on, and the differences between around 1880 when progressivism begins to blossom in America. And from my research, and I've done a lot of it, you can definitely see the more German Marxist, the national, what would become like a national socialism, much more closely to like a fascistic sense of governing, to where the state, not like in Russia after the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, where the state owns and operates every factory, sense of production means, but more in the sense of how Germany viewed it, which is the progressive model at its roots. The government, the state, regulates. They don't necessarily own. So it's a quasi-private ownership of your factory, though you're being given state quotas, etc. But you do the hiring, you do the books, and you have to answer to all this millions of state regulators. So it's much more along a fascistic sense, which is where I will go in my paper, tying the progressives to the German model. And that's why I found Bartol interesting, because it will help lend to another piece of the puzzle for my own dissertation. And going back to Strathdy, he really kind of comes at it at a very different way of dissecting progressivism. You know, looking back to human nature, but not looking at Locke or Adam Smith or others, but looking at a couple lesser known characters that you would tie in the argument of progressivism. I mean, John Stuart Mill is well-known progressive in the American sense, but tying St. Augustine to that and then looking at what they believed, because that is part of the progressive order, is a belief system. You know, they're big on the collective organism. And I had a couple pieces, or at least one anyways, that Bartol talks about, where he says, in Britain, collectivism became a means by which progressives could extend, refine, and build upon the legal and political control already established over economy and society, and to make that control the basis for more fundamental reconstruction. In the United States, collectivism became a means of raising a new pitch, continuing efforts simply to secure basic political, legal, and institutional controls in the backwash of America's own ambiguous reconstruction. This is the main problem I have with almost all the academic analysis about progressivism. He very correctly talks about how Britain, out of the Fabian socialists, had a state structure of collectivism and socialism that became embedded, and they blossomed their progressivism almost directly from that. To where in America, there's always this argument, well, we're not socialists, meaning we're not the Fabian socialists. We're not communist. You know, we're just trying to make a better organism, a better structure. And we need to collectivize, and we need to be statists to do that, because only the state can do these things. And what Bartol and others usually miss is, and he goes through it in his entire, and most of the ones I've read do not really look at the roots of the progressives. Who were these guys? Where did they learn their ideals? Who did they model them after? And when you look at the German connection, things really begin to blossom and open up. So that's what I have for this week's discussion. I hope everybody has a great first week, and thank you for watching.